It won't have escaped your notice that the language of equality, diversity, and inclusion is all over our culture and our workplaces. We want to make sure, don't we, that those values of equality and diversity and inclusion are, they're running through the core of our organizations and the way that we deal with one another, the staff, the way that we deal with the public. But like many values and virtues, it's interesting to stop and ask the question, why do they matter? Why is it that we've settled on equality and diversity and inclusion? And in fact, why do equality, diversity and inclusion, why are they important? Why are they significant? I mean, let's think about each of them briefly for a moment. Take the E in EDI, take equality. What does it actually mean to say human beings are equal? Because you stop and think about it for a moment and go, it's patently obvious that they aren't, right? Human beings are incredibly different. Some are short, some are tall, some are very athletic, some, couldn't run 100 yards, let alone a mile. There are men and women, some are young, some are old, some are rich, some are poor, some are very clever, some are not so clever. And quite frankly, take 10 human beings at random, you're going to see an incredible range of difference. So what does equality mean? Even if we try and fudge it and go, well, it means the way we treat people, we treat them all as equal, but they're not equal. So how do we square that circle? It gets very difficult actually to find some kind of realistic basis for saying equality is a real thing. Okay, well, let's leave that particular thorny question. Let's try the next one. Let's try D. Surely diversity is going to be easy to talk about, but then hang on a moment, why does diversity matter? Why does it matter that we celebrate difference, we welcome difference, we look to really encourage it? Because if we look outside humanity to the wider animal kingdom, most animal species, most groups of animals are in fact deeply homogeneous. You look at a colony of rabbits, they all look largely the same. One cockroach looks much the same as another. One wolf looks much the same as another. But animals don't seem to sit there and go, we really need to mix things up a bit. Where do we, as humans, get the idea that diversity is a virtue? And then lastly, of course, is inclusion. Particularly the idea that we should try and work super hard to include those who are traditionally excluded. We can again ask, what's the basis for that value? And again, being really harsh and honest with you, look into the natural world. Again, in most species and colonies of animals, the one that doesn't fit, the antelope that's a bit slow, the wolf, that doesn't quite measure up to the values of the pack and so on, tends to actually find life quite short and brutal. In the animal world, we do not see inclusivity as a virtue. So where on earth, as human beings, did we get this idea that EDI, equality, diversity, and inclusion, really matters, that they're virtues to be championed? Well, I think at the risk of causing minor controversy, I would want to say that those values are actually deeply Christian. That even though we live in a secular society, the values that infuse that society have their roots right back into Christianity. And don't take my word for it, take the word of one of the most influential historians writing today. His name is Tom Holland, and Tom wrote a best-selling book called Dominion a few years ago, looking at this very theme. And he was deeply intrigued as a secular historian why it is that we celebrate these virtues. And as he looked at their roots and their origin, he found they go right back, as I say, into Christianity. Take the idea of equality, for example. Tom points out that virtue actually comes right out of the Bible, out of Genesis chapter 1, where we read that all human beings are made equal, they're made in the image of God. And he makes the point in his book that if you look at every ancient society that we know of, there was very much a stratification of humanity. Some were rich, some were poor, some were slaves, some were free. It was not taken as a given that all human beings were equal. We have the Christian faith to thank for that idea in the West. And the same goes for those other virtues too. Diversity. Again, the Bible has this idea that actually there is something in every human culture to be celebrated, because all human culture reflects something of the God who created us all. And similarly on inclusion, if you want to see the biblical foundations for that, just go read the Gospels. There's 4 historical accounts of the life of Jesus Christ, and you see very quickly there that the heart that God has for the outsider and the one who doesn't fit in is reflected on page after page after page. So next time you see the language of EDI sloshing around your workplace, be grateful for those virtues that we have in our society today, but remember where they came from, and maybe take that as a nudge to perhaps look more at the Christian faith, where E, D and I have their roots.